Industrial Revolution took place in Britain during the 18th and 19th centuries. Before industrialization began, many manufacturing systems took place in homes using handmade tools. This was just the start of major changes in factories. People everywhere began to see factories improving their developments. Although industrialization expanded the products factories were producing, the basic way of living also resulted in harsh working and living conditions for both the poor and the working class.
During this period in time, most manufacturing systems began and operated in homes of everyday civilization. They would build long sheds next to moving streams to house the machines. The fast-moving water from the stream would become their source of power. Once these streams began to grow larger, they added water wheels. These wheels would be easily powered by all the equipment needed for a factory. Steam power was also another development during this time. The new steam engine's main purpose was to pump water from the power new forms of transportation. These new transportation systems opened doors during the Industrial Revolution. Rather than using horse-drawn wagons or small boats and canals, people were using steamships and railways. The first steam engine railway was constructed in the early 1800s and was more than 6,000 miles long. Around the mid-19th century, steamships were also hauling cargo all the way across the Atlantic Ocean. Began, a large amount of goods were produced in the homes of everyday people. Producing goods in homes with machines became an issue as it took more time and labor. Employers then decided to move out of home shops and transfer into large buildings such as sheds and factories. Often these buildings were located near streams. Water from the streams produced power for the machines. With the invention of factories, this meant employers could produce more goods in a shorter amount of time. Since most factories were built by streams, soon steam engines were invented for the machines. The machines were powered by the steam engines. These machines, along the workers, started producing large quantities of goods. People in business were amazed at the size of production in factories. Therefore, factories were an important part of the Industrial Revolution. More production and less work became a new way of life during the Industrial Revolution.
Were built during the Industrial Revolution, employers were in dire need of workers. People during this time would do anything for money, and with that, these employers could set wages as low as they wanted. The employees worked 14 to 16 hours a day for 6 days a week, only earning about 10 cents an hour. For working women and children, the pay was even worse. Women would only earn 1/3 of what men earned. For children, it was even less. Though these children were used for simpler tasks, they still had to work the same amount of time as a grown man and were paid less than 10 cents. Many of these children became physically damaged due to the lack of exercise and sunlight. These employers didn't care about the labor costs, but only the profits they were making. Besides the fact of not being treated well, the factory work conditions were awful. The only light they had came through the windows. In some factories, the machines even spit out black smoke and soot, which covered the workers by that time they had to leave. There was an abundance of machines that were not safe, this leading to many accidents and even some deaths.
Growing, people began to move northeast looking for jobs. Most of these people lived in the slum. According to the dictionary, a slum is a thickly populated, run-down, and squalid part of the city. This is inhabited by poor people. 5 out of 9 people in the slum lived in single rooms with the size of an apartment. With so many people living together in such a small place, disease spread quickly through one another. Most of these people that caught the disease ended up dying due to the lack of medicine and medical care. The revolution led to many advantages and disadvantages for Britain. With the invention of factories, many people left farms for the cities. This was also known as urbanization. Cities grew as people were looking for jobs and often found jobs in factories. This was a huge advantage for Britain. Factories would employ men, women, and children. Factories where powered machines produced more goods in an efficient way. With factories, the supply of goods increased and the prices of goods fell. The lower prices meant goods were more affordable. The invention of factories helped the upper and middle class citizens too. These individuals made more money and fortune. They also benefited by having cleaner homes, healthier diets, less disease, and often lived longer. These people also had educational benefits from the production of these factories. Factories contributed to Britain's success during the Industrial Revolution. However, they also brought many disadvantages.
In the factories, often men, women, and children had rigid work schedules. They would work 14 to 16-hour shifts on machines with no safety devices. This meant exhausted workers, which caused many accidents and even deaths. Women were hired to work machines due to their adaptability and lower wages. They would often be out of their home for 12 hours a day and still go home to feed and clothe their families. They would also have to clean and deal with illnesses. Another disadvantage of factories is a child labor. Children would be hired in factories for a limited wage. These wages, however, would help to keep families from starving. If children were caught not working, they may be beaten. Factories would also hire orphans from locals. Most of the children hired to work in the factories were slaves to the machines. In addition to discipline and child labor, factory employers and employees had an impersonal and cold relationship. Employees were expected to work when the machines were running. Many workers earned a very low wage, but were often expected to work at a rapid pace. Another disadvantage of being a factory worker was their living conditions. Many workers lived in a crowded, tiny room with no running water, sewage, and sanitation system. These people lived in poverty, where the air they breathed was polluted and neighbors filled the disease like chorea. The invention of machines in factories brought advantages to the upper and middle class, but the poverty sickened citizens. It brought many struggles just to stay afloat and provide for their families.